Karen Ristabin. I live here in Rockport, Massachusetts, and I'm a kayaker and I'm also a lawyer. Basically, there are some rules of the road that you need to know before you go out kayaking that help you avoid collisions. That's what they're meant for. The Coast Guard rules generally give a hierarchy as to who has the right of way between power, sail, and paddle vessels. Basically, power gives way to sail and sail would give way to paddle. However, there are many exceptions to that, and basically the rule, your rule of the road should be common sense, and that's built into these Coast Guard rules and regulations as well. When there is a fishing boat that's trawling a net, you have to get out of its way. If you're crossing a channel and you know that another vessel can't see you or is not maneuverable, then you get out of its way. The rules basically tell you that it's your responsibility, being in a vessel on the water, that you should do everything in your power to avoid collision at all costs. You've heard some about the rules of the road, but you really have to think about your attitude when you're out there on the water. And you're small, the kayak is small, and you have to assume that you're not going to be seen by other boats on the water. If there are other boats on the water anywhere near you, the best thing you can do is just avoid a collision at all costs in any way that you can. When you're out on the water and you see another boat and you want to determine if there's a risk of collision, there's a simple way to determine that, and we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to be using this, this toy tugboat to demonstrate this method for you. In the first case, we're going to assume that the vessel is on a parallel course to us and presently just aft of parallel to us. Now you can see that it's moved a little bit ahead, and it's just forward of the beam of the boat. Okay, now it's about 30 degrees forward of the beam of the boat. Okay, now it has clearly passed me, and there's no risk of collision. It's well past. Clearly, we're not advocating that you take your hand off your paddle to determine the angle between you and another boat. It's just to give you an idea of how to judge that angle and to use the idea of relative bearing to determine if you're on a collision course with another vessel. Okay, now we're going to show you a situation that is a potential collision. I see another boat out there in the water, and if I point my arm out at about a 45-degree angle, that's a starting point to determine if we are actually on a collision course. It's important to remember, too, that you are on a steady course while making this calculation. Okay, I see that the boat's getting closer now, so I put my arm out again, and I see that it is still at that 45-degree angle. All right, now it's even closer. So I put my hand out at that 45-degree angle, and sure enough, it's still on that course. Clearly the boat's getting much closer, and it's still at that 45-degree angle. So it's close, and it's too late to do anything about it at this point. I should have taken evasive action much earlier to avoid this whole situation.
Name's Captain Richard C. Holt, Jr. We're on board the motor vessel Antwerpen, about a 42,000 ton bulk ship. I'm Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The ship's in ballast condition, preparing to sail for sea here in the next 10-15 minutes. So we pretty much, on the way outbound with the vessel, have to stay in the center of the buoy channel, give or take maybe 150 feet or so. 'Cause we have about a 480-foot wide channel, and when you're trying to make some of the 90-degree turns that we have, it's important that you're perfectly in position to make a nice controlled turn for where you want to be to come out of the said turn. So there's very little room for error as far as moving to one side of the channel or the other.
Jeannie, you can get clear whenever you like, Steve. I'll put you back just where you are after the bridge with no line.
This ship is 660 feet long and about 96 feet wide. And like I said, it's capable of carrying 42,000 tons of cargo approximately. And in the ballast condition, it still weighs close to 28,000 tons. Especially with the small boats, it's impossible for how heavy the ship is to turn it a little bit, say the small boat goes the same way, and try to turn back. There's just no way to outguess as cumbersome and as heavy as the ship is to try to move when you're, number one, constrained by a draft. and number 2 in a narrow channel or fairway. And the small kayakers and small boats, there's not much we can do to avoid them.
Starboard 10.
Starboard 10.
We'll slide a little to the left going through here. The wind's on our starboard side a little bit. Holding up on the starboard side. Starboard 5.
Starboard 5.
When inbound or outbound on a tanker or a bulk vessel, you'll see you can see how big the ship is from far off. In our perspective, on board the ship, many ships have a blind spot. To have small kayaks and boats in the path of the ship, when they're closer than, you could even say a half a mile, it's possible that they're in their blind spot, meaning from the navigation bridge of the ship down across the superstructure, you can't see directly in front of you low in the water for up to a half a mile in front of you. And anything even close to that, we're guessing at where somebody is, and it's impossible for us to maneuver to avoid in a narrow channel fairway with a kayak or a small boat in front of us. And of course, the faster the ship is going, the wider the berth that a small boat kayak should give. So if you can see a bow wave on the front of the ship, meaning there's more speed, you want to give us early and substantial clearance and not staying right in front of us to the end and off to the side, because we are helpless to avoid you. Everything is on you. And the earlier and the more obvious you make it that you're moving off to the side, the more relaxed we are about passing. And that's, it can be quite dangerous because there's not much we can do, for it takes us anywhere from a half a mile to a mile to stop the vessel. And we can't stop every time somebody gets close to us. We'd never get to where we're going.
Unless you have advanced navigational skills, you shouldn't paddle in the fog. But there's always a chance that fog will roll in when you're out there on the water. If you're out on the water and you see a fog bank offshore, you want to chart your position, determine where you are, and head for shore as soon as you can. If you do get caught in the fog, you should be prepared for that. You should have a fog sounding device, such as a whistle or a fog horn. That's required by the rules. If the fog rolls in around you, you want to blast on that sound device at regular intervals so that vessels in your area know that you're there. You should also be listening for other vessels in the area so that you can avoid them. And you can hear the luff of a sail, you could hear the engine of a motorboat or of a car. Unless you're an experienced paddler, you shouldn't paddle at night. If you do find yourself out at night unexpectedly, you should be prepared and have a flashlight with you. The rules require that you are able to shine the flashlight with sufficient time to avoid a collision.